A city larger than kingdoms, richer than empires, and powerful enough to challenge the ancient world was said to disappear beneath the sea in a single day and night. No confirmed ruins, no surviving records, no final answer. And yet, for more than 2,000 years, people have continued searching for it. Tonight, drift back through the ancient world and follow the trail of one of history's greatest mysteries. From Plato's original account to volcanic disasters, submerged cities, and forgotten civilizations, this is the story of Atlantis and the question that refuses to disappear, because the deeper the search goes, the stranger the mystery becomes. And by the end of this journey, Atlantis may seem less like a lost city and more like a puzzle designed never to be solved. Around 360 BCE, in a quiet room in Athens, an aging philosopher sits beside a small oil lamp. Outside, the city has settled into silence. Inside, he writes about an island beyond the known world. Then he gives it a name, Atlantis. The man writing is Plato. Today, he is remembered as one of history's greatest philosophers. But he was also a master storyteller. His dialogues explored justice, power, wisdom, and human nature. Many of those stories remained inside philosophy classrooms. One escaped and traveled across centuries. Atlantis appears in 2 of Plato's works. One is called Timaeus. The other is called Critias. What makes the story unusual is the way it is introduced. Plato does not present Atlantis as a new invention. Instead, the tale arrives through a chain of voices stretching far into the past. An Egyptian priest tells the story to Solon, the famous Athenian lawmaker. Solon brings it back to Greece. Generations later, Critias repeats the account. The effect is powerful. Atlantis already feels ancient even during Plato's lifetime. It arrives covered in dust, already old, already mysterious. And according to that story, Atlantis was unlike anything the Greeks had ever imagined. Before exploring where Atlantis might have been, it helps to understand why people became fascinated with it in the first place. Because Plato did something unusual. He described Atlantis with extraordinary detail. According to the account, Atlantis existed beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the gateway most people now associate with the Strait of Gibraltar. It was a powerful island civilization, larger than Libya and Asia combined, according to the geographical language of the time. Its rulers controlled nearby islands. Its influence stretched across distant lands. Its wealth seemed endless. At the center stood a remarkable city. Concentric rings of land alternated with rings of water. Bridges connected each section. Canals allowed ships to travel inward from the sea. At the very center rose a sacred island dedicated to Poseidon. The details continue. Walls covered with shining metals, busy harbors filled with ships, temples and palaces, forests and plains, hot springs and cold springs, elephants, horses, soldiers, priests, and kings. This was not a vague mythical island hidden inside clouds and magic. He described engineering. He described government. He described infrastructure. A vague legend can be forgotten. A measured city invites investigation. And for more than 2,000 years, people have accepted that invitation. According to Plato, Atlantis did not begin as a corrupt empire. At first, it was noble. Its rulers were descendants of Poseidon and a mortal woman named Plato. For generations, they governed wisely. They respected law. They valued balance. They understood that wealth alone did not create greatness. But over time, something changed. The divine qualities faded. The human qualities grew stronger. The rulers became ambitious, then greedy, then hungry for power. Their fleets expanded. Their armies marched. Their influence spread outward. Atlantis sought domination, and eventually, it turned toward the Mediterranean world. Standing against it was an ancient version of Athens. Not the Athens Plato knew, a much older and idealized Athens. A city of disciplined citizens and virtuous warriors. In Plato's story, Athens defeats Atlantis, but the victory does not last long. Nature intervenes, earthquakes strike, floodwaters rise, and in a single day and night, Atlantis disappears beneath the sea. The great island sinks. The civilization vanishes. The ocean closes above it, and the mystery begins. For many centuries, the simplest answer seemed obvious. Atlantis was a story, a philosophical lesson, a warning about pride, greed, and power. In this interpretation, Plato created Atlantis as an example. A civilization blessed with abundance eventually destroys itself. The city becomes a lesson rather than a location. But there was a problem. Plato filled the story with real places: Egypt, Athens, the Western Sea, the Pillars of Heracles. He anchored the myth to geography. And once geography enters a story, people begin searching maps. The search for Atlantis had begun. For centuries, explorers, historians, and dreamers searched for Atlantis. Some looked west into the Atlantic Ocean. That seemed like the most natural location. After all, Plato placed Atlantis beyond Gibraltar. Maybe the island lay somewhere beneath the waters between Europe and the Americas. During the 19th century, this idea exploded in popularity. Writers imagined a lost continent hidden beneath the Atlantic. Some proposed that Atlantis was the original source of civilization. Others claimed that ancient cultures inherited knowledge from its people. The theories became increasingly dramatic. Atlantis transformed from a city into an entire forgotten world. But modern geology creates a serious problem. Continents do not simply disappear. The Earth's crust leaves evidence. Mountain ranges leave evidence. Ocean floors leave evidence. A giant advanced continent vanishing without trace becomes difficult to support. Still, the search continued. The Azores, the Canary Islands, the Caribbean, the North Sea, Antarctica, even the Sahara Desert. Atlantis seemed capable of appearing almost anywhere, and perhaps that reveals something important. Atlantis had become more than a place. It had become an idea. One of the most intriguing theories points toward the island of Santorini. Known in ancient times as Thera, thousands of years ago, Thera experienced one of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history. The explosion shattered the island. Ash darkened the sky. The center collapsed into the sea. Tsunami spread across the region. nearby civilizations felt the effects. The Minoan civilization on Crete may have suffered significant disruption. For many researchers, the similarities are difficult to ignore. A prosperous island, a sudden catastrophe, fire, water, destruction. A civilization permanently changed. It feels remarkably close to Plato's story. But problems remain. Thera lies inside the Aegean Sea, not beyond Gibraltar. The dates do not align neatly, and Plato's Atlantis reflects political ideas that seem uniquely his own. Still, the theory survives because legends often preserve fragments of real events. A disaster can become a story can become a myth, and a myth can survive long after the original event has been forgotten. Another theory points toward southern Spain, near the marshlands of Doñana. Some researchers believe ancient settlements may lie buried beneath layers of sediment. The area sits close to the Atlantic side of Gibraltar, closer to Plato's location than Santorini. The region also connects to Tartessos, a wealthy culture known to ancient Greek writers. This theory offers something valuable: geography. For once, Atlantis appears roughly where Plato said it should be, but certainty remains elusive. Marshlands conceal as much as they reveal. Shapes visible from above can inspire excitement. A circular formation can look convincing, until further investigation reveals something ordinary. Archaeology moves carefully. Atlantis does not. Every new discovery creates fresh speculation. Every excavation generates new questions. The city remains just out of reach. There is another possibility, one that many historians find persuasive. Perhaps Plato built Atlantis from multiple sources. He knew about earthquakes. He knew about floods. He knew cities could rise and fall. He lived through political turmoil. He witnessed the consequences of war. He watched Athens struggle with power, pride, and failure. Maybe Atlantis was not a lost island. Maybe Atlantis was a reflection. A mirror turned toward society, a wealthy naval power, an ambitious empire, a civilization that forgot restraint. In that reading, Atlantis was never meant to be excavated. It was meant to be recognized, not beneath the ocean, but within human behavior. And yet, even that explanation never completely satisfies, because Atlantis feels too vivid, too detailed, too tangible. The city seems to hover somewhere between history and imagination. Part of Atlantis's power comes from a simple fact. Lost cities are real. Troy was once dismissed as legend. Then archaeologists uncovered ruins. Pompeii disappeared beneath volcanic ash. Then it reappeared centuries later. The Egyptian port city of Heraklion slept beneath the Mediterranean Sea until divers discovered statues, temples, and inscriptions underwater. History contains many surprises. Cities vanish, floodwaters rise, coastlines move, entire communities disappear. At the end of the last ice age, sea levels increased dramatically. Ancient shorelines were submerged. Settlements disappeared beneath advancing water. Human memory may preserve fragments of those events, not perfect records, not maps, but echoes. If so, Atlantis could represent one of those echoes, a distant memory transformed into myth. If Atlantis was fiction, Why does it feel so geographical? If it was history, why does it fit Plato's philosophy so perfectly? If it was real, why has no evidence settled the debate? Every answer creates another question, and that may explain why Atlantis continues to fascinate people. The city exists in a unique space, detailed enough to invite investigation, mysterious enough to avoid confirmation, ancient enough to feel inherited, uncertain enough to remain alive. Most discoveries eventually reach an ending. Atlantis never does. Every generation returns to the search. Every generation imagines the city differently, and every generation finds something new inside the story. Perhaps Atlantis was a real place. Perhaps it was inspired by ancient disasters. Perhaps it was Plato's greatest teaching tool. Or perhaps it was all three at once. A memory, a warning, a mystery. The perfect lost city is never fully found, because once it is found, it becomes finite. A location, a museum, a collection of artifacts behind glass. Atlantis remains powerful because it never quite reaches shore. More than 2,000 years later, ships still cross the Atlantic. Satellites still scan coastlines. Divers still descend into blue depths, searching for straight lines beneath the sand. And somewhere in the darkness beyond certainty, Atlantis remains exactly where Plato left it, just beyond the pillars